So, guys, I wanted to jump on here in between my podcasts and my other videos to just sometimes talk about, just off the cuff, some thoughts and feelings that you might be related to it as well. And right now I wanted to talk a little bit about dreams and setbacks. And now, why am I sitting in the middle of a cemetery to do this video? Well, this is where dreams come to die, sadly enough. So it's important to cling on to whatever dreams that you're having. And I know it gets hard sometimes because of the ups and downs of life, and you might be going through it right now. But just try to remember, like, when you were a kid and you felt like you could accomplish anything, or even going into adolescence, you still felt that dream and desire to, maybe become a sports star or musician, actor, whatever the lofty dream was at the time. And then eventually you started getting voices telling you that you couldn't do it. And maybe one of those voices was your own. But if it's somebody else's voice, that line in The Pursuit of Happiness where he says, when someone tells you you can't do something, it's usually, it's a reflection on themselves. So it's important to drive those voices out and keep trying to pursue those goals, no matter what the setbacks are in life. Because as time goes on and you start, working a job just to pay the bills, it can grind you down because you're working for, Nepo babies and narcissists, and they start trying to tell you what your value is, whether, it's during your work performance, or they say you got let go from a job because they didn't need you anymore. Your position was eliminated. Well, that is not a reflection on you, and it's important to remember that. Because your value is not based on someone else's opinion of your work ethic. It's based on your opinion of yourself and how much work are you actually putting in to pursue these goals and these dreams that you have. And that's when you got to look in the mirror and decide who you actually want to be. And it's never too late. I remember back when I was, I used to, be a hostess in a restaurant early on in one of my early jobs, and I would look around at the people who I called lifers. And I wondered to myself, is this, nobody wakes up and says they want to wait tables for a living. You just fall into it and you become complacent. And I know that it's a struggle and you have to pay the bills and so forth. But the minute you stop denying what your true calling is when you start to feel less than. And like I said, it's up to you to recognize your value. Even if somebody is touting your positive traits, it is up to you to recognize who you are and what you can accomplish, and to go after these things with gusto. But the other thing is you're going to have a plan. You can't just charge in, banging your head against the wall. I know I did that early on in my writing career. I was like, by the time I'm 25, I am going to have made it. Whatever made it means, I don't even know. I just knew back then I was going to be, lighting the world on fire. And that didn't happen. But that doesn't mean that I stopped. But hindsight being 20/20, it's important to have goals that you're reaching towards the main accomplishment that you're trying to produce. So there's a line in the show Xena Warrior Princess that I always reflect on, and it's not even from Xena herself. It is from the girl who plays her daughter. She's talking to Xena's sidekick Gabrielle, and they're talking about, essentially killing someone. And Gabrielle says she's just going to go in and get the job done. And Eve remarks, "That's your goal. What's your plan?" So you have your goal, and then you have your plan to attain that goal. And you can structure that however you want, but it's important to have one so that you know the goalpost. Where are the goalposts, and are you reaching them? And if you're not, you can reestablish what criteria it takes to actually get to those goalposts. Because otherwise, like I said, you become complacent, and eventually those dreams die. And you don't ever want to live an unused life. So make sure you remember that going forward. Like I said, it's never too late to accomplish your goals. And this is why my tagline, and every time I sign anything or sign off on my podcast, is always live your dreams. Because if you're still breathing, you have an opportunity to follow through on what you've always wanted to do. So make sure you go out and do just that.